morning everyone. So this is the interpretation of statutes class, and today's topic will be introduction of, it is introductory class, and we'll be discussing about meaning, purpose, scope of interpretation of statutes, nature of statutes and their classification. First let us understand the meaning of interpretation. Now you can read. Interpretation means, the first line, starting from the first, means the art of finding out the true sense of enactment by giving the words of the enactment their natural and ordinary meaning. So it is the process of ascertaining the true meaning of the words used in a statute. The court is not expected to interpret arbitrarily, and therefore there have been certain principles which have evolved out of continuous exercise by the courts. These principles are sometimes called rules of interpretation. So basically, interpretation of statutes is the correct understanding of law. The term is derived from the Latin term interpretari. Now, what does this interpretari means? This means to explain, to expound, understand, translate. So interpretation is the process of explaining, expounding and translating any text or anything in written form. A process, I'll repeat this, interpretation is a process of explaining or expounding or even translating. When you translate something, any text or anything which is in any written form, when you translate it, when you explain the meaning of it, when you expound it, that is interpretation. When you interpretate it, when you understand it. So therefore interpretation means the art of finding out the true sense of enactment by giving the words of the enactment the natural and ordinary meaning. The natural and giving them the natural and ordinary meaning. So it is the process of ascertaining the true meaning of the words used in a statute. And court is not expected to interpret arbitrarily. And therefore there have been certain principles which have evolved out of continuous exercise by courts, and therefore these principles are called rules of interpretation. Now when I have said about interpretation, what important question raises is that what is a statute? What is a statute? First we will understand it, then we will understand more about interpretation as to about its definition. But first let's understand what is a statute. So a statute is a formal written enactment of a legislative authority that governs a country, state, city or country. It's country, not county. So a statute what is a statute? This term statute is basically it is defined as the written will of the legislature. What does this mean? So that a statute is a formal written enactment of a legislative authority. It means that it is the written will of the legislature. Now this will has to be expressed formally. To the forms which is necessary to constitute it as a law of the state or a country. So statute is a written law. And what is a customary law? It is an oral or unwritten law. So this is the meaning of statute. Then statute may generally be classified with reference to its duration, nature of operation, object, extent of application. Now we will understand how. What does it say and what does it mean? On the basis of duration, statutes are statutes are classified as either perpetual or temporary. So first we will understand what is this perpetual statutes. Now, if you can read, it is a perpetual. Just a second. It is perpetual when no time is fixed for its duration, and such a statute remains in force until its repeal, which may be expressed or implied. So what is perpetual statute? When no time is fixed for its duration. And what is temporary statute? A statute is temporary when its duration is only for a specified time and it expires on the expiry of the specified time unless it is repealed earlier. So on basis of duration, when I say statutes are classified either perpetual or temporary, and it is perpetual statute where no time is fixed for its duration, and such statute, it remains in force until its repeal, which could be either express or implied. So it is, how it is perpetual in sense? It is perpetual in the sense that it is not obligated. It is perpetual in sense that it is not obligated by flux of time or by any non-user. And temporary statute, on the other hand, is one where its duration is only for a specific time. Now, this duration of temporary statute can be extended by fresh statute or by the exercise of power conferred under original statute. So in these two ways, perpetual and temporary statutes. Then further it is divided, classified statutes with reference to nature of operation. First is prospective statute. Now what is this? Then there is retrospective statutes, directory statutes, mandatory statutes. The prospective statutes is a statute which operate upon act and transaction which have not occurred when the statutes take effect. So basically you need to understand which regulates the future is a prospective statute. Is the prospective. What do we mean by prospective? Which is likely to happen at a future date. When you're expecting to be something specified, any specified thing in future. Therefore, it's written that is which regulates the future is a prospective statute. Now, retrospective statute. Every statute takes away or impairs, you can read, vested rights acquired under the existing law, or creates a new obligation into a new duty, or attaches a new disability in respect of transaction or consideration already passed. So retrospective is which is already passed. Looking back. That's what the retrospective mean. Then directory statute. It is affirmative in its term and recommends a certain act or omission. But this statute does not impose any penalty. Then mandatory statute, which compel performance of certain act. These are four kinds of classification with reference to nature of operation, and importantly perpetual statute and temporary statute. This is a classification of statutes. Moving on to the meaning and definition of interpretation. Now what according to Salmon, what Salmon says about it. about the interpretation. According to Salmon, interpretation or construction is a process by which the court seeks to ascertain the meaning of legislature through the medium of authoritative forms in which it is expressed. So, the object of interpretation of statute is to determine the intention of the legislature, which is conveyed expressly or impliedly in the language that is used. And that is what stated by the Salmon, that by interpretation or construction is meant the process by which the court seeks to ascertain the meaning. It is a process by which the court seeks to ascertain the meaning of legislature through the medium of authoritative forms in which it is expressed. So this says that the object of interpretation of statute is to determine the intention of the legislature, which is conveyed either expressly or implied in the language. Then, by Cooley, interpretation differs from construction in the sense that the former is, that is interpretation, is the art of finding out the true sense of any form of words. That is the sense that their author intended to convey. Construction, on the other hand, is drawing off. Okay, it's not there. Okay, read this. Moving on to the interpretation of statutes is required for two basic reasons. Legislative language and legislative intent. Now, what is the reason? For legislative language, because legislative language can be complicated for a layman, and hence we require the interpretation to understand it. Not every man would understand the legislative language, right? So for that we need interpretation. Then for legislative intent, first is for language, second is for intent. What is this intent? The intention of the legislator or legislative intent assimilates two aspects. First is the concept of meaning, that what the word means. For that we need interpretation. Then the concept of purpose and object. What is the purpose or object of that statute which is made? For that interpretation can be required. So in these way, legislative language and legislative intent, we require interpretation of statute. Now moving to the points to be taken care of in context of interpreting a statute. The intention of legislature has to be seen. The statute must be read as a whole in its context. The statute should be construed as to make it effective and workable. So if a statutory provision is ambiguous and capable of various construction, then that construction must be adopted, which will give meaning and effect to the other provision of the enactment, rather than that which will give none. So three things: if intention of the legislature has to be taken care of. What is the intention of a legislature while they are making the law? The statute must be read as a whole in its context, and the statute should be construed as to make it effective and workable. Then if meaning is plain, the effect must be given to it irrespective of consequences. The process of construction combines both literal and purposive approach. The purposive constructive rules highlight that you should shift from literal construction when it leads to absurdity. Okay. Then again, this object I have explained you. Scope and nature of interpretation. There is this case R.S. Nayak versus A.R. Antule, in which Supreme Court has held See, if the language is clear and unambiguous, when it is not clear, this means then no need for interpretation would arise. When it is clear, when the language is clear, then we don't need any interpretation. In this regard, in the R.S. Nayak versus A.R. Antule case, Supreme Court has held if the words of the statute are clear and unambiguous, they are not confused, they are crystal clear, then it is plainest duty of the court to give effect to the natural meaning of the words used in the provision. The question of construction arises only in the event of an ambiguity or the plain meaning of the words used in the statute would be self-defeating. Now, then when is there the necessity of interpretation? It will only arise when language of a statutory provision is ambiguous and it is not clear. For understanding the object of the statute, the meaning which is not clear. So, I hope this is very clear to you. Then again in this case, Grasim Industry versus Limited versus Collector of Custom, Bombay, the Supreme Court have said the same thing. Where the words are clear and there is no obscurity and there is no ambiguity and intention of legislature is clear conveyed, there is no scope for court to take upon itself the task of amending or altering this. So same. Now Blackstone also says that fairest and rational method for interpreting. See, they are saying all the same things. Salmon also said about it. Now Blackstone, the fairest and rational method for interpreting a statute is by exploring the intention of legislature. Now here he says, what is a method? He talks about method for interpreting a statute is by exploring the intention of the legislature. To know the intention, he has focused about the intention of legislature through the most natural and probable sign, which are either the words. How will you find the intention of legislature? Either the words, the context, the subject matter, the effect and consequence, or the spirit and reason of law. So that is the fairest and rational method for interpreting a statute. So that's it. This was about interpretation of statute. Hope this is clear. We have discussed about its meaning, nature, and statutes, their classification, the intention, and so on. In next class will be next video we'll be doing about the aids, internal, external aids, and other things of the interpretation of statutes. So that's it. At the end, I'll just conclude by saying that interpretation here, this means the art of finding out the true sense of enactment by giving the words of the enactment their natural and ordinary meaning. So this whole process of ascertaining the true meaning of the words of the words which are used in statute, this is all called the interpretation of statutes. So thank you.